of UCLA Conversations. First, I'd like to introduce Emeriti Association President, Professor Fernando Torres-Gil.
Thank you, Stuart. Welcome, everyone. This is one of a series of opportunities for all of us to stay connected, whether you're Emeriti faculty or retired staff. We're all here because we believe in this great university and we want to continue to be involved and to give back. So on behalf of the UCLA Emeriti Association, we welcome you. We also have our director, Aisha Dixon, wave your hand. And we have great collaboration with the UCLA Retiree Association and Judith Tuck, my good colleague, and Darnell, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Fernando, and I just want to welcome everybody today on behalf of the Retirees Association and to say what a fabulous partnership it has been with the Emeriti. And this is the last conversation of the year. And thanks to Stuart, who did a fabulous job organizing this, and to Michael, the backup back there, who does the recordings, Aisha, and everybody else that made this possible. And I'm looking forward to another wonderful year next year, and we hope we'll come up with a wonderful program for you to attend. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Judith. We're very fortunate today that we will hear from Darnell Hunt, who's UCLA's admired Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, UCLA's top academic officer, a distinguished scholar of media, race, and culture, whose research is focused on the entertainment industry. Provost Hunt joined UCLA's faculty in 2001. He is deeply committed to high-quality public education and research that crosses disciplines. Provost Hunt is known for his vision, mastery of details, and for being fair, pragmatic, unflappable, and calm, with wise insights into the complexities of university leadership. He previously served as UCLA's Interim Chancellor, Dean of Social Sciences, Chair of Sociology, and Director of UCLA's Bunche Center for African American Studies. Please join me in a warm welcome for Provost Darnell Hunt.
Great to see everyone. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you for joining us. You said last October that you're committed to working with the community to ensure that UCLA remains one of the greatest institutions of higher education the world has ever known. You've also talked about obstacles and challenges that UCLA faces. Let's start with your outlook for UCLA, which I know that you know so well, and tell us about your reasons for your optimism.
Well, I'm a product of UCLA. I did my PhD here, and to have the opportunity to come back and as a faculty member, and then in a leadership position is sort of, kind of a dream come true. So I really believe in this place. I think it's special. And I don't think that was hyperbole, what I said about being the most important or impactful university the world has ever known. I think that all the elements are there. We're already the #1 public university in the country, and because of that, we have a public mission that we take very seriously to leave the world better than we found it. We're in a city that, in many ways, is the cultural capital of the world. So the ideas that come from UCLA and our researchers, our students, influence the way we think about the human condition in profound ways that other places can't, because they don't have the proximity to the culture industries that we do. I happen to study those industries, and I think they are very meaningful in terms of helping people engage with the problems of the day in ways through storytelling, in ways that humans, I think, have found profound throughout the existence of humanity. So I really do think that we have amazing scholars here, we have amazing students. It's a statistic that I don't know if we should be proud of, but we're only admitting 9% of our students. There are amazing students who can go anywhere in the world, but they choose to come here. The same is true with our faculty. As a dean, I had the pleasure of convincing faculty not to go to the Ivies, to come here. And they came here because, again, of the unique confluence of things that exist here in Los Angeles, our public mission, the fact that we're very prominent, all of those things, I think, position us to do things that our peers can't really do. I think it's a competitive advantage. So I really do believe we can do that.
I've heard that, oh.
Yeah, but I was going to say, in terms of challenges, obviously we're in a very challenging moment politically. Higher education as a whole is, well, I don't think it's, again, hyperbole, under attack. Certainly the way that we traditionally thought of higher education. That will have an impact on us. We're game planning now to figure out how to keep moving forward in terms of the vision we have for the university that's articulated in our strategic plan. But that really is our biggest challenge at this point. I think it's sort of what's happening politically at the federal level, and just funding in the state. In the state, you know, we're going through a state budget crisis. There's a deficit. Funding for UC overall is down and threatens to be even lower. So I think those financial challenges are real. But fortunately, we have some levers we can press and some things we're trying to do to diversify, I guess, the portfolio of revenue that this university depends upon. But I don't want to understate sort of how significant this moment is and some of the challenges we face right now.
I would like to pick up on that because not everyone is so optimistic these days, and you have talked about the obstacles. So tell us a little bit more about why you remain confident despite the federal environment, despite state budget cuts. It seemed like really impactful. There's a hiring freeze now.
Yeah. Well, I'm a cautious optimist. You know? So you have to get up every day and come to work and do your job. If you just feel that there's no hope, I mean, it's hard to kind of keep moving forward. But I'm not naive. I mean, I know that these challenges are real. I mean, we receive about $1.1 billion a year from the federal government. You know, you don't replace that easily. You know, some of it's student support. Most of it is research support. So again, we're already thinking about other ways to keep the research enterprise going, working more with industry, which is of course what the model was prior to the federal government's big investment in research in the 40s and 50s.
1.1 billion, you said.
Well, 1.1 billion is the total amount. I believe that's student support as well as, you know, grant, you know, funding for research. I think the development of IP, you know, we have a research park, you know, and that was, an investment was made kind of forward-looking in terms of developing the types of relationships with industry and government that allows us to co-create, you know, new discoveries and to generate intellectual property that can be, you know, that can support and subsidize the rest of what the university does. So I remain optimistic about that. So I think, you know, and just the core of this place and what this place represents is important. And so for all those reasons, despite the headwinds, I feel, you know, working together we'll get through it. I mean, things will be different. I mean, there's no question about that. As our chancellor likes to say, we'll do different things and we'll do things differently. We have to. We can't continue to do things the way we've been doing them. I mean, I think a crisis creates the opportunity to rethink things and to innovate, and I think we have to do that.
Are you able to be more specific, or would that come probably with Chancellor Frank's inauguration?
I don't want to steal his thunder, but he will talk about those things.
Sure. So you've said that UCLA aspires to be not only a great university, a great research university, but also the most impactful, you said that again in your opening comments, with the largest positive influence on the real world. And UCLA has a strategic plan designed to achieve this. The strategic plan continues into 2028 and focuses on 5 goals. Could you tell us first about UCLA's engagement with Los Angeles,
right?
Deepening UCLA's engagement with Los Angeles, and how UCLA is doing so?
Right. Well, it's no accident that was goal 1 for us in the strategic plan. If you think about UCLA's trajectory from the southern branch of the University of California, when everything was in the Bay Area and Berkeley was forever the public university, well, guess what? We passed Berkeley, you know, and we tied with them a few times, but clearly we're in the same ranks as Berkeley in many respects now. And did so in a relatively short period of time. We're only 105 years old, whatever it is. And, you know, again, there's no accident. We grew up with LA. When Berkeley was founded, when the University of California was founded, it was put in Berkeley in the Bay Area for a reason, because that was the center of activity in California. Guess what? Now it's LA, you know, in many respects. We're the second largest city in the country. So as LA has grown, so has UCLA. And so hitching our wagon to LA, I think is a smart thing to do. Given the profound diversity of groups, I mean, we have like the largest diasporas outside of sending countries of people here in LA, we speak over 200 languages. We have all kinds of industry. Like I said, there's sort of the tech industry. Some of us moved here, Silicon Beach, but there's also the entertainment industry, which has a long-standing history here. So there's really a lot to build on that I think makes engaging with LA a smart thing to do. And as the Chancellor has pointed out, it's something that we've been talking about for a number of years here, and one of the reasons why this was goal one for us. Higher education, or the value of higher education, has sort of become a target. And I think the current administration has weaponized that in a way, and it's made it easy to sort of call out higher education for what it's not doing. And the more that we can demonstrate the relevance of what we produce, the value of what we produce, I think we start to earn back or deepen the trust of the community, and as a public institution, the taxpayers. So one of our goals for deepening our engagement with LA was to touch more people, and particularly communities that don't typically have a relationship with the university. And in a city like LA that's as diverse as it is, that represents lots of possible groups that haven't in the past been in the orbit of the university or connected with it. So that's why that particular goal, I think, is so significant going forward.
Can you tell us about the new UCLA downtown building and how it will be used?
Yeah, well, that was something that the university has been talking about for pretty much the whole time I've been here. I've been here, this will be my 24th year, I think it is, when recent count. We used to have a building downtown when I was a grad student years ago, a UCLA extension building that was sold, unfortunately, and I believe now is a loft or a condominium, whatever it is. But the point is, there was no real UCLA brick and mortar presence downtown, with the exception of some space that I think Extension rented west of Figueroa, but it wasn't really in the happening part of downtown, and they weren't really there and visible. It wasn't very visible at all. Meanwhile, of course, our partner across town, USC, that place over there, they have the big, UCLA and USC on the top of the skyscraper, the whole bit. They have a presence downtown that, at least in terms of the way people perceive the university, that we did not. So we've been talking for a number of years about the need to be downtown, and of course, once we sort of established a strategic plan and goal one, deepening our engagement with LA, that became a no-brainer. We knew we had to be there. So we were just looking for the right opportunity, and we found it in the Trust Building, and the name is perfect. What we're trying to do, create trust with the community. It's an historic building, literally 4 blocks from City Hall on the same street, which allows us to engage with the Civic Center, with the mayor, with the County Hall of Supervisors, DWP, all these different agencies, community-based organizations that are nearby. It's right across the bridge from East LA, and our growing Latinx populations. It really puts us in the center of activity and really the future of LA. And it allows us to demonstrate our partnership and our ability to inform policymaking. We decided early on with the building that we had to figure out how we're going to fund this thing. And one of the things we wanted to do was establish the building as an incubator of collaborative research focused on LA and engaged scholarship in LA. So I appointed a board chaired by one of our faculty members who is a historian of Los Angeles, actually, who understands the history of LA, and composed of a number of different stakeholders from different functional areas across campus, like government community relations, our academic senate, our student body leadership, just a range of different people who have different investments and stakes in the university, to review proposals from all over campus about different research projects that would like to be housed in the building, rent-free, and that was the key, rent-free. And so the question was, how do we come up with a financial model that covers the operating costs of the building, that allows these research projects that are, in some cases, operating on a shoestring, to have space in the building so they're proximate to the community groups they're working with. And one of the criteria, as they were reviewing the applications, is which community partners are you working with? And you have to be able to demonstrate that you're working with community partners and that you're collaborating. There's a two-way flow of information and engagement. We, I believe, received about 50 applications from across campus, and literally every single school was represented, some multiple times. And the committee was able to whittle it down to about 28, I think, proposals that it accepted for admission to the building. The building had been completely renovated because the developer was hoping to sell it as condominiums, I think, at some point. The infrastructure, the seismic, all the things that are typically an obstacle for us were taken care of. But the building, many of the floors had not been built out, they were just wide open loft spaces. And maybe, I think 3 of the floors were built out because they were occupied by various tenants like architectural firms and a few others. So when we took over the building, our tenants, eventually their leases were up, they moved out. We were able to move in those projects into the completed space. There are about 7 or 8 floors that are completely wide open and unimproved that we're hoping to eventually build out so we can bring more projects in the building. So we were only able to let 12 of the 28 projects in initially based on the available space. The rest of the space is used by University Extension, who moved their whole administrative hub into that building. And the goal for them is to take 1 or 2 of the floors and to build them out as classroom space so they can really start to invite in LA. And we're thinking of the building as UCLA's living room, like literally open to the public, folks to really get a sense of what we do, not only in the humanities and social sciences and the sciences, but also in the arts, because there's sort of like retail level space on the ground floor where we can have art exhibits and other things to really showcase the range of work that goes on at UCLA. The people's university, really, and that's the way we think about it.
We'll look forward to hearing more about those projects. UCLA recently announced 2 other important acquisitions, UCLA South Bay and UCLA Research Park, formerly the West Side Pavilion. Can you tell us what work will be done in each of these?
Yeah, of the 3, the Research Park is probably furthest along because, as you may know, it was made possible by a $300 million line item from the state legislature to support the California Immunology and Immunotherapy Institute. And the original plan was to build a building on this campus, which was somewhat controversial. We have very limited space in this campus. In fact, only a few buildable spaces. And the Senate in particular was concerned about an independent entity building a building on campus. Even though it would be a partnership with the campus, the idea was that this could be better used for UCLA-specific activity. So when we found out about West Side Pavilion, or the former West Side Pavilion, which had been purchased and developed by a developer who was only going to lease the space that had been improved to Google. And then we learned that Google wanted to get out of the lease because they had acquired it prior to the pandemic. And as happened in many industries with the pandemic, the modality of work changed. Lots of people work at home or telecommuted. Google suddenly decided, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars in this space to improve it, but no, we don't need it. So let's see if we get out of the lease. And for us, it was perfect timing because it gave us an alternative to building a building on campus that would have been controversial. We already had the $300 million from the state. We were able to get essentially what amounts to a gift, but I don't think they can call it that because Google got it released, but we got it for a fraction of what it would have been because Google wanted out, and so Google kind of wrote off the loss or whatever, and we were able to take over the property. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty amazing. To take a tour of the interior, if you've ever been to West Side Pavilion, you would not recognize the space. I mean, it's completely redone. We had several regents take tours of the space when we were in the process of acquiring it, and they said that hands down this would be the best building in the entire UC system, just in terms of the quality and the potential for what could be there. It's pretty amazing.
How much of the old West Side Pavilion does UCLA have?
The entire, well,
it's all of it?
No, everything except for the old main company.
Oh.
And the main company is owned by another building, but we are interested in possibly, when I say we don't have the financing now. But there are, let's just say there are donors associated with the university who would like to, I think, increase the bandwidth of what would be possible at the research park if they were able to figure out ways to help us finance it. So we're looking into possibilities with potentially UCLA Health, possibly the engineering school, all would make sense to be, in that complex, because we're going to be doing immunotherapy, but also quantum computing. That's the other big anchor tenant that will be in the complex initially.
So this is cutting edge health and
Absolutely.
engineering research that could lead to new treatments.
And we're really thinking about creating synergies by different types of projects being in the space that would mutually reinforce one another. So quantum and immunotherapy, as they're thinking about all of the complexities associated with that, would be a natural combination. And of course, UCLA Health and doing clinical trials, possibly, in the space, and engineering, developing the hardware and the software through computing and computer science that could aid with what's going on as well.
That's very exciting work. And how about South Bay?
South Bay is least developed, and you didn't hear from me, but still question marks in terms of what's going to happen with that. Again, largely due to funding. We acquired that property right before I became EVCP, so it's just happening as I came on board. One of the first things I did as EVCP is I charged a joint Senate administrative task force to try to figure out what the focus of the campus should be. And we had lots of ideas. We wanted the faculty to have a prominent role in that for obvious reasons. And to really take a look at the market, look at our peers, look at the site, and figure out what made the most sense. The report that came back said that this should be a campus that's focused on climate change, sustainability, environmental justice, and that's the focus. And if you haven't been to the campus, it sits on a bluff overlooking the Pacific with Catalina in the background, 180-degree views. It was a former Catholic university that was pretty small, had about 1,000 students, and we think that we could probably, at peak, have about 1,000 UCLA students there. We then developed a curriculum committee to kind of take a look at, okay, what would a curriculum look like there, and how does that relate to the main campus? Because the academic senate was clear, our campus is Westwood, period. We don't have satellite campuses. Other places that we may have fulfill very specific missions that are meant to complement the main campus. Just like downtown is complementing our need to engage more deeply with LA. This campus is not replacing Westwood, which means that all UCLA students spend time in Westwood. Students would go to this campus almost like a year abroad to have a very intensive experience around climate change and environmental justice and sustainability, and then come back to Westwood.
Very interesting.
That would be the plan. And so that's kind of what we're thinking about it. The issue now, of course, is financial pressure from the state in terms of whether enough revenue will be generated by the additional students to help offset the cost of the campus. Pressure from the federal government. Most of you know that environmental studies and climate change are dirty words and off limits, and grants are being canceled left and right to do that type of work. The Port of LA, which we've been partnering with on this because they were super excited that we were there because it's like a stone's throw from the port. We were already talking about internships for our students because the port is trying to reduce its carbon footprint, and it had lots of money from the federal government that now may be going away. So it's unclear whether the funding stream will be there to make the campus what we hope it to be. So stay tuned on that one, we're still working on it. But the other two were pretty far along.
Exciting. Elevating how we teach is also part of the strategic plan. Adriana Galvan, Dean of Undergraduate Education, has said she hopes to help enrich our students the resources they need to thrive, grow, and become engaged members of society. Can you tell us about plans to improve undergraduate education?
Sure. Well, one of the tactics associated with that particular goal was to create a teaching and learning center. Traditionally at UCLA, we had the Center for the Advancement of Teaching, CAT, which was located in undergraduate education. We intentionally moved that out of undergraduate education and created a separate vice provost position for teaching and learning to emphasize and to elevate our focus on teaching. So Aaron Sanders O'Leary, who's our inaugural vice provost for teaching and learning, works really closely with Dean Galvan. They work together, and they both work with me on really thinking about what the state of the art is in terms of how we teach and how we learn. That center does a lot of work with course redesign and helping faculty think about ways to do things differently. A lot of research is conducted on the best practices in terms of teaching and learning. They have incentive programs set up to fund faculty as they think about doing things differently. They've kind of instituted this holistic review of teaching, rethinking how we do teaching evaluation to really try to get closer to what actually works in the classroom. We've begun a classroom modernization program that the TLC leads. Funding, of course, is a barrier, but we managed to kind of squirrel money aside. The value of the strategic plan is that it allows us to pinpoint priorities among all the things we could be doing, particularly in a period of scarce resources. I think the plan becomes even more important because it helps justify the things we do as opposed to the things we don't do. But I think that particular goal is a critical one, and I think the Teaching and Learning Center kind of is taking the lead on how we move forward. Each of the goals has like a goal leader whose job it is to shepherd that goal forward. And then the goal leaders meet collectively to kind of talk about ways that they might cross-pollinate because some of the goals overlap. And then Chancellor Frank, when he came in, he brought someone who he wants to kind of lead the execution of the plan so that we have someone who's dedicated 24/7 because most everyone else has a day job, they're the dean or they're professor or whatever. But this person's sole job is to sort of direct traffic and make sure that we're firing all cylinders across the 5 goals.
So it's not Adriana Galvan who would be the leader?
Well, she is one of the leaders of this particular goal.
Oh, she is.
She and Erin Sanders O'Leary are kind of like co-leaders of this goal. But Claire Chaumont, who the chancellor brought in, is kind of the conductor, who makes sure that all the goal leaders are kind of moving forward towards their goals.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about technology and higher education. Is a new emphasis on data science part of this effort to improve teaching and undergraduate teaching, or not necessarily?
I mean, it could be. So we have something called DataX, which is an initiative that one of my predecessors started some years ago that we were finally able to bring to fruition last year by appointing 4 different directors. There are 3 pillars of DataX. There's fundamental data science, which really gets into the technical aspects of data science. Then there's another pillar, applications of data science. How do we apply it in the real world? And the third pillar is data justice. What are some of the social and ethical considerations about data science, AI, etc.? Mm-hmm. And so those 3 directors each lead their own pillar. Each pillar has its own budget. And then there's an executive director whose job it is literally to convene the other 3 directors and to make sure the 3 pillars are working together. And they're creating something that we think is uniquely UCLA, such that scholars who work in one of the domains are almost forced to talk to scholars in the other domains so that we're thinking holistically about the impact of data and moving forward the way we think about and use data. The other thing data science does is we've demanded more or less that every major initiative on campus that involves technology consults with DataX because we want to make sure that the scholars are talking to the administrators, like what used to be ITS, Information Technology Services, is now DTS, Digital Technology. It's not services, it's something else.
Solutions.
Solutions, there we go. Right, they just changed their name last week. So they have a number of different panels on campus that deal with things like acquisition of software, classroom technology, and that's where the teaching piece comes in. And we want to make sure the DataX is consulted. And we have people doing research on the front line, our faculty, kind of helping administrators think about how to implement things on campus.
What are your thoughts on the role of artificial intelligence and technology in higher education?
It's here, and it will be more of a force going forward, we think. So we're actively thinking about the implications and how it might be integrated into the way we teach and learn. So within the Teaching and Learning Center, AI is a very prominent subject. Within DTS, I just mentioned, they have their own AI specialists within DataX. It's one of the areas of focus, and the three of them are working together as we think about what it will mean going forward for faculty members and for students.
Oh, and UCLA hired a full-time administrator to oversee AI, didn't we?
Within DTX, yeah.
Mhm.
But then again, it's kind of distributed because there are pockets of AI expertise around the campus. Obviously, within engineering and computer science is huge. In fact, we approved quite a number of new faculty hires in engineering, and many of them will be AI focused in one way or another.
Mhm. Are there areas of interdisciplinary research that you think UCLA is well positioned to take a lead on in the coming years?
Many of them. I mean, certainly in AI, I think that touches upon pretty much everything we do. One of the things that we talk about in the strategic plan is the value of being a unified campus, where we have the medical school and everything on the main campus, as opposed to 20 miles away. It creates natural and facilitates easy collaborations between colleagues in the medical school and engineering, between the medical school and Anderson, between the medical school and the law school, between the medical school and public health and social sciences. And so we see that as sort of like our competitive advantage. So we double down on that, we emphasize it, we do everything we can to encourage cross-campus collaborations. And so I can't think of very many areas that are hot right now where we shouldn't be a leader because of our ability to kind of bring people together like that.
It sounds like immunotherapy will be one of them, and
Absolutely.
maybe quantum computing as
That's
well.
right, that's right.
Okay. I want to ask you about athletics. First, what are your thoughts about UCLA's move to the Big Ten Conference?
Necessary but not sufficient. If we had stayed in the Pac-10, unfortunately, we'd be in a world of trouble financially. One of the problems with the Pac-10, unfortunately, is that the curse of being on the West Coast, the time zones don't help us. I mean, so our games, occur at 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and East Coast no one's watching, so your ratings are lower. And guess what? That means the contracts, the TV contracts, are a lot lower, and so you cannot compete with the likes of the Ohio States and the Alabamas, where they're in a either East Coast time zone or close to that, and have huge TV audiences. And in this day and age, in terms of intercollegiate athletics, money drives the process and more than it ever has before. So the Pac-10 schools were increasingly losing their edge competitively because you're not going to recruit the top athletes, you're not getting the same payouts that the other leagues got. And so it became obvious that as the major schools in the Pac-10 started peeling out, and then of course the Big Ten saw a huge opportunity to be the largest, they're the largest conference now, to bring in UCLA, USC, Washington, Oregon, and coast to coast in terms of, again, TV revenue. So, I believe we receive more than twice as much annually in TV revenue that we were getting from the Pac-10. Now, that said, that's not nearly enough to cover our costs. Our programs are still in deficit, but the deficit isn't nearly as large as it would have been if we had stayed in the Pac-10. So, but I think from an athletic perspective, if you talk to student athletes, they're excited about the level of competition and the fact that they're competing with 17 other schools that are extremely accomplished in many ways. There was a question about what it means for student athletes to have to travel the way they do, and so there's been a lot of attention focused on trying to come up with a schedule that's humane in terms of grouping games away so that you don't have to travel across the country as many times. And fortunately, because 4 of the Big Ten schools are on the West Coast, we can play those games here, like against USC and Washington and Oregon. So I guess we've only been in the conference for a year now. That part of it seems to be working out. The financial part of it is certainly better. There's something called the Big Ten Academic Alliance that all the provosts belong to, so I meet regularly with the Big Ten provosts. And then all of our other, well, not all of our, but many of our leaders have their own counterparts in the Big Ten who meet regularly. Like all the Big Ten librarians meet regularly, the IT people meet regularly, the CFOs, I think, meet regularly, and they share best practices. And we have some great schools in the Big Ten. Northwestern, University of Chicago is part of the Big Ten Academic Alliance, even though they aren't part of the athletic conference. And the Big Ten Academic Alliance actually has what it's probably recognized as the best leadership training programs in the country, for deans, for department chairs, for senior administrators. And as part of the Big Ten Academic Alliance, we get to send our leaders to those conferences, to those training sessions, which typically happen in Chicago every year. And so I was really excited about that part of it. So there definitely are benefits. And again, a rapidly changing landscape that if you don't change, you get left behind.
Mm-hmm. Former North Carolina State basketball coach Jim Valvano once said about university administrators, Monday through Friday they want you to be like Harvard, and Sunday they want you to play like Oklahoma. And the former president of the University of Oklahoma once said his goal was to have a university that the football team could be proud of. So this is a big topic, but I wonder if there are any thoughts you want to share about college athletics and UCLA's place in athletics.
Well, again, it's a changing landscape. The House settlement, we'll be paying student athletes soon, revenue sharing. It's a whole new ballgame. I mean, I've been a lifelong college athletics fan. I love college sports. And I have to admit, I'm not as connected to it now as I used to be because it feels more commercial. And you have players who, the teams change every year because the portal, and you thought you knew the team, the next year was a different team.
But not with our women's basketball team.
Well, not with our women's basketball team. Well, not yet, but
Yeah.
But increasingly, to be at to compete at the level that we typically compete at, with the first university to 100 national championships. Doing what we used to do is just not going to work. It's not going to keep you there. I mean, and our basketball team, our football team, the question is, what type of investment will it take for them to really be in the upper echelon? And that's sort of what people are trying to understand in a rapidly changing landscape. When, in the next year or so, it's the free-for-all in terms of attracting athletes to your university to keep you in the top. So stay tuned.
Okay. I think no one would be surprised if you become a university president or chancellor. And I wonder...
I'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised? Well, you already have been. You've already been interim chancellor.
Well, that was already here.
I wonder if you can share some lessons that you've learned, maybe from your time as an interim chancellor, but from your years at UCLA, including your time working with Chancellor Julio Frank and perhaps Jean Block as well. Some lessons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's being honest, as best you can, being honest and transparent. I mean, there's some things you can't say for obvious reasons, but I think you're working with colleagues who deserve to know what the rationale is behind, the decisions you make or the decisions the university has to make. I think listening, doing the best you can to listen to people and hear where they are, because you may think you have all the answers, but you don't most of the time. When I started this job, the first thing I did was take a listening tour to every school and every administrative unit just to get a sense of what the issues were on the ground. I mean, I think I had a pretty good sense. I'd been here 20 years at that point, and I kind of knew the campus pretty well, but you always learn things you don't know, and I think it's good to demonstrate to people that you want to hear from them. And so I think one of the lessons I learned from, Jean Block and Julio Frank in his short time here, and the first thing he did was launch sort of what he calls a listening exercise, is that is just a hallmark of effective leadership. I think you have to do that, and so were I to be a president, although I'm not, that would be one of the core things I would focus on, and developing relationships with people, because it is a relationship-oriented job. The big difference between that job and this job, since I've kind of done both, is there's a level of granularity that I'm dealing with constantly in my current role as Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost that you cannot deal with as Chancellor. I mean, Chancellor is much more outward-looking. You're dealing with the regents, you're dealing with the Office of the President, you're dealing with donors, with elected officials, and that takes up a lot of your bandwidth. And so all the details I'm dealing with in terms of working with faculty, with deans, appointments, you can only engage with that at a certain level as a president or a chancellor.
In high school and the start of college, you thought you would become an engineer or an architect. What changed your plans?
Well, so I actually applied to, I was on my way to Georgia Tech actually to be an engineer. That was going to be what I was going to do. But then the opportunity to come to Southern California as an architect, a place across town that I can name now. I had never been to LA before, but so sort of like on a whim I decided, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm from the East Coast originally, from Washington, D.C. So I came out here to study architecture, which is still a passion, but it just felt limiting, you know, after I got through my first year because everything was architectural calculus, architectural this, and I'm thinking, well, this is not the liberal arts education I thought I would get. I wanted to be exposed to more things because it was a pre-professional degree and it was very focused in terms of the curriculum. So for that reason, I kind of went undeclared and I kind of discovered, hey, I like writing. I did okay in high school, but that wasn't where I was oriented. But I really did discover I liked to write, and that kind of changed my trajectory, I guess. And again, I never would, at that point, when I was 19 or 20, I wasn't thinking about the academy or becoming a professor, and certainly not an administrator. Even when I became a professor, I never wanted to be an administrator, you know. So, you know, those things evolved, but, you know, somewhere along the way, I got a business degree. I went to business school after undergrad. I worked in business for a while, decided I didn't really like the corporate 9-to-5 life. That's when I went back for a PhD. And now I've come up full circle. So a lot of the stuff I did in business school, administration, of course, being a faculty member and doing research, and engaging with faculty, for me, it all kind of comes together in a way that I never would have planned.
And that concludes the public part of our program. Thank you very much. Okay.